Are we able to record? You said we didn't have any call-ins?
We're streaming and
We are
recording that way, but
Okay.
since we recently changed to Spectrum, there must be a glitch in this phone line or something. I gotta get with them, so no big deal.
So streaming, but not call-ins?
No calls.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to up our internet because I
Okay.
got our body cams in. They
Okay,
stream.
so I will call the meeting to order at 7:01. And present today is myself and Ben, and Chief Mike Holler, and Administrator Kevin Seifert. Jeremy did call and say he would not be able to make it, or texted rather. And no guests in the room. We asked for you each to come up with some points from your employees. So, Kevin, you want to be first up?
Yeah, we
What-
got together and just kind of letting them know that we wanted their input, thoughts, comments, questions, about this process, and because they're going to be affected by it just like we all are. So they initially, the first point here, ignore that. I'll come to that later. But employee retention, that was trying to keep the current employees. We go. I don't know what in the past how many employees that the village has been through or anything like that, but employee retention was a big concern. Recognition for longevity, they feel that there's no recognition for longevity. If it's a simple after so many years, a simple meal, a simple something, I don't know, but they just for lack of better words, lack of recognition, unappreciative, things like that. They had, the caps on salaries. That was a big question. We're talking about if the committee or if council, if the village decides to go with some sort of pay scale, tier, step, is there going to be caps on the salaries? And I said, yeah. I mean, your positions is going to have a cap. I mean, you just can't keep paying and paying and paying and paying and paying. There's, for one, the village can't afford it.
Exactly.
So there's going to be caps on the salaries. If you're for your position, just once again going through the wage scale again. If you're here so many years, this is what it's going to pay at that certain time. So yeah, they weren't happy about that, but it's like it can't go on forever. There has to be some cap, I think. Certification licenses, is that going to be extra in a matter of a bonus, a raise, or whatever? And I said the committee was talking about that. If that certification license or whatever it is benefits the village, benefits your job, things like that. Another question Doug had was part-time help. Is the part-time help going to start out? If they got so many years experience, are they going to start out at that level? And then Brent and I was talking that, it probably should be, have them start out at the beginning level, the entry level, and then at the end of their probationary period, when the supervisors do their evaluation, then if you feel that they have that 2-3 year experience that they say they did, then you jump them up at that time. They all agree yearly evaluations is a great idea. I briefly told them that at one point in my career, I was doing 2 evaluations, year end and mid year, July. But we got rid of that and just went strictly to the yearly evaluations. I think that's sufficient enough. So they're all in agreement to that, and everybody getting on the same schedule, things like that. They did not. They were wanting to know if these step increases was going to be a percentage based increase or just a dollar amount increase. They feel that the percentage increase is not fair. Basically not fair across the board because the person making the higher wages is going to benefit more from the percentage than the person with the lower increase. So they're more in favor of a set dollar amount in your step increases, So, and just a question I had, around Christmas time, has the village ever given any, bonuses or just a gift, hams or something, just to show their appreciation? So we just threw that in there too. And I don't know if that's ever happened in the past or not. Have you ever, so long as you've been here or anything like that? So
No, but almost everything on that list happens for us.
does it?
That's why, yeah, and that's the thing. So for example, salary caps. Technically, the village already has caps on salaries because you guys have the
range,
the range, and it tops out. It's just you decide. Sometimes the employees get to it, and it's been increased because of the pay range.
Sure.
We already have a cap, which gets raised, like when they redo it, 2015, which the paperwork I put out. I didn't include the 2015 one, but in 2017, council passed that pay scale for the officers, which is an increase of a dollar amount, not a percentage, but the cost of living percentage, because we didn't factor that in. Nobody really thought about it. There's just confusion across the board, so we were just not going above the dollar range because of how it's outlined. Retention's always been an issue. Ours is mainly because we can't offer full-time. You guys seem to retain full-time employees well.
I think you have more of a problem with the retention than we do on this side, yeah. So.
Yeah, and retaining the full-time employees isn't necessarily as bad as it's the part-timers. But again, I don't know. I think it's because we start them out so low on the rate, but plus they want full-time.
Well, also because you're hiring part-time, not necessarily in the PD, but in the other end,
Yeah,
you're
which
hiring
seasonal.
and you're also hiring young people who are just using it to pay for their schooling and then they go on, or it's a step.
Right.
It's not something
Yeah,
that they take on.
Yeah, as I said, the part-time folks, we're just going to have turnover on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think we should also label that out for keeping data, your seasonal versus part-time. Because to me, seasonals, they're seasonal. They're not part-time, really, because, they're only going to be here for that brief time anyway.
Sure.
And I thought everybody got yearly evaluations, but evidently just the PD has to do yearly evaluations. I mean, you know what I mean? So that's where it's. And then certification, license, bonuses, and raises, we don't get those, but my understanding is some folks down here have, in the water side.
Right.
And then, I'll give you an example. This pay scale, it's supervisory. From my understanding, it looks to appear it's almost, even though council approved it, it's been only if the supervisor sends it down, so they're the only ones that really have the approval, because we follow this, but it's selective in nature, I guess is the way to put it, because this is, I just had an officer that had brought it to my attention and I wasn't clear on it, but we retro paid them, which is good, but we haven't done that in the past, and there's really no fine line there was really no way to fix that, I guess, other than say, okay. The yearly evaluations, I like the fact that we just do it all at the first of the year. I think that's almost seems to be universal.
Yeah.
So when you do your yearly evaluations, you do them at the beginning of the year?
No, we have done them on date of hire, and then we've done it when if a part-timer if somebody was already part-time, went to full-time, we were doing it on the paper says anniversary date of hire, but like, for example, I got hired in September, but I got full-time in November of the same year, promoted to sergeant same month. But when I got promoted to lieutenant, that was in a January. So, but I also didn't get evaluations every year. I think I got one every couple of years. At the beginning I did, but we were told that pay raises were completion of a successful evaluation, which all my evaluations are very good. but I didn't get my pay raises like I was supposed to, and that adds up over time. And in fact, it was fairly significant when I sat down and did the math. It was well over $7,000, which is a lot of money. But I didn't really. I mean, I'd asked a supervisor, and I was just told they had to talk to council, and then, which is what I had told my officer when they originally asked me. I said, well, I gotta talk. I don't know if I can pen stroke it. Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't know if we're going. Yeah, I thought we were doing year or higher date, not year of position, because that's how it was kind of outlined in there. But to me, it made sense to do if you were full time at your year of that position, that you move up in that pay range. But because of the response that I got when I had asked about mine, because I was denied the retro pay, I didn't know what to do, so I figured I'd ask some folks. But of course, I'd asked a few times prior to that. I just asked direct supervisor, but it's just confusing.
Well, what we really need to do is clarify the wording of that to start with, and we need to talk to.
Yeah, and it makes sense
about
the year-end position. But if, for example, if I don't give somebody an evaluation, I haven't did the sergeant's evaluation yet. His year was up at the end of January. However, he just had one 6 months ago. But I did give him his pay increase for his time in, which I did it then. But I do have to get his evaluation done, but since I've done one just in the 6 months and we've been so busy, he knows it's coming. And I thought I'd have it done before now, but it's close. But, when you have employees across the village, you've got, for example, the PD end, except for the Christmas bonus, is pretty much, we already have all that covered. But yet you have other employees in the village that are asking that. So
the longevity one, Mike, do we give
we don't have longevity, I'm sorry.
Can we do that? Can we do stripes for 5 years or something like that? Or 2 years or whatever?
Well, we have
the sleeves.
You can,
the sleeves.
Well, it's not as far as a monetary, we recognize people for service.
Okay.
I got an award for 6 years of service, and I don't know when it was. It just happened to be 6.
Yeah.
But officers are able to put a star, have 5 years of service on their shirt. We don't pay for it, but we allow them to do it. I mean, I would buy them one if they wanted, but generally they go out and get it on their own. But as far as recognition, there's nothing set in stone. But 5 years usually is 5, 10, 15, 20. But it would be nice that somebody kept track of that as far as the village, right? And said, just a nice little email goes a long way. Like the Merry Christmases we get from council members, that's really nice when it's a group. They feel that they're recognized.
I mean, I've noticed lately, Fairborn's been doing this repeatedly and Springfield's been doing it. They're posting on social media every time there's an anniversary. They're I think it's city managers coming down and giving these guys certificates and making a big to-do out of it. Would that be something?
I implemented an officer of the year, which I had talked about, but I just haven't done it because we are so short-staffed. But I took this from the chief of Ada PD, who's a OACP rep. They put their officer of the year and they put their name on their police department letterhead for that year, and it says, officer, for example, Isaiah Ballard would be our officer for the year, which I haven't announced at a meeting yet, but I just did for 2020.
So it's fine.
Yeah, and it would say Officer Ballard, Officer of the Year, right? And that is recognition right there. It doesn't cost us any money, other than however long it takes me to type it. But with the COVID and not meetings, I know he stepped down to auxiliary, but it's simply me typing a letter and bringing it up to council. Here it is, April.
But, and a certificate for his
absolutely.
own records.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
And then, so if the village had an employee of the year or however, you don't have to do that. But, stuff like that.
I think it's just the sense that I'm getting is it just not getting recognized, and he said, it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Just something, just to keep the morale up,
It's awesome to get a plaque.
Employee of the year is different than longevity. So
what's that?
Employee of the year is different than
sure.
longevity. So
sure.
We need to do the longevities, but decide every 5 years, every 2 years? I don't know what you would think would be.
If somebody's here, you could go 5 years. You could go, then another
5, and
another 5, and then
do 5s and 5s
20
and 5s
and 25, or
right.
Yeah, if we did like additional, like for example, and I'll just a dollar's easy to say, but it doesn't have to be a dollar. But every 5 years of service to the village, they'll pay you $1 on the hour, which I think is kind of much, but doesn't have to be. So then in 10 years you get another buck. So that cures your bonuses, right? Because it kind of falls in line with that. It helps the caps on salaries. It helps with the retention, because I know, over the course of 13 years that I've been here, I have had people approach me about employment. And in 2010, which was a fun time in the police department time, I had a very large case. So I had to stay to work on that. That was the largest case so far that I've ever had. So how can I leave work with investigating that large of a felony case? But in the same token, I wasn't happy coming to work based off some of the folks I was working with. Just being honest, right?
Yeah.
And then in 2012, we had a transition of supervision, and I was told that I was going to, they were going to prep me for being the chief of police, right? They were going to get me through some training and stuff. So I had something to do and goals. But prior to that, if it wouldn't have been for that case, I probably would have left, just because I wasn't happy as working in the group that I was working in. But since then, I've been offered employment, and I haven't taken it because I like working here, but I can't say it hasn't, you haven't been like, ooh, interesting. But I'm loyal to here. So we reward, I'm sure there's people out here that's been offered jobs. I know the water department lost Ryan Brown after he got his water license, shortly after it. But he had a pay raise and all kind of stuff. I know the mayor at the time had given him a bump up in pay and given him a lot of stuff to reward him, only to watch him leave with the license. That's just something we're going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Excuse me.
I mean, did he go somewhere big? I mean, or
I think he moved out of state. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm here 3 years, and I know in 5 years I'm going to get an extra 50 cents on the hour, and not to mention that I haven't topped out in my 5 years of service, right? So I'm going to get that increase in that plus my longevity. So if I'm here 3.5 years and 6 months come along and I got one more year and I'm getting ready to get over $1 an hour raise, right? 50 cents for my longevity, plus if, at our current pay scale would bump you up to the next $1 an hour. And then if we didn't figure in that percentage of cost of living into that would be a full $1 raise. Well, that's significant. Mm-hmm. Because let's be honest, everywhere you work, there's a top, right? I think the sheriff's office is in Clark County, I believe, is 6 years. I think whatever their top pay scale is, at 6 years, the only way for you to get any more money is the trustees or whoever it is that meet and decide to increase the wage an hour or the range, and or you move to a different unit or promoted. I had a top pay at an officer pay, but I always knew that that's not all I would make here, because I knew I was going to go higher, whether it was here or somewhere else, because myself wanted to promote myself. Now, unfortunately, this affects the police department and the water department or the street department, and I'll try not to hold the floor, but there's only so many top people. Mm-hmm. So that is when we had an officer here, that was one of his things. You want to be the chief. I know that you're going to be the chief, and I can't go high. He didn't want to be the chief. I think I was a sergeant at the time. He wanted to be a sergeant, knew he wasn't going to have two. He says, I know you're going to get promoted to lieutenant. We're not going to have a sergeant because we don't have enough people. I'm not going to be able to step up the ladder I want to. I've got to go because I want to grow as an individual. Officer Barrett. Absolutely, young man. I understand, right? That's just we're not going to be able to prevent that. But what we can prevent is the confusion and this is neat, but if it's not technically, I almost say it's strict compliance, then what's the point of having it? Or what fixes it? I like Christmas time. We have a Christmas party, and the last year we haven't had any get-togethers as a group.
Right.
I used to get I used to get my door decorated for my birthday. That hasn't happened for a couple of years, but that wasn't done as the village. Small stuff. But we are so busy because the village is growing, and we still have the same amount of people. You still have the same responsibilities and more added to it, but the same group. And
more
the
coming.
employees supporting each other, especially when they're apart, that emotional support, that togetherness that we've always had since I've started here, through good and bad, has fizzled away because everybody's just too busy.
So are you looking at anybody right now as far as the application process?
I have 2 part-timers that just started, one with experience, one fresh out of the academy. I have another applicant I'd like to call in to an interview. I would like to fill another part-time position. What I would like to do, what we do already, is work a part-timer this many hours that's in front of you, but we back them off over a few course of months, and I'm sure you do it at your end too, to avoid that average of over 32 hours a week, which then that employee comes to you and says, did I do something wrong? I noticed you cut my hours. No, we pay the full-timers or whoever overtime to cover that, to avoid offering health insurance at a 50% cost to the village. And then because again, I'm learning through Officer Godwin, he left, Clayton PD employed him. They told me that, I said, how do you avoid giving insurance to a part-time employee that works more than 32 hours a week on average? He said, we offer it to him. It's at a 50% rate of the cost, not the share like what full-timers pay, but like, for example, if a single coverage plan costs $10,000 for that person, Clayton will pick up 50% of that, and the employee will be responsible for the other 50%. They don't have any employees taking that because nobody can afford that, but they're following the federal guidelines. And if we did offer that and somebody was willing that and it would cost us $5,000, we're going to cost us $5,000 anyway, because as soon as they leave, like he did,
Right.
I've got almost $2,000 just to get them in the door, and I'm sure we'll spend close to that just getting them out by themselves. So as a business model, we just need to look at where we're deficient, especially at the PD end. And that's why I was like, well, first thing I need to do is we got to attract people money-wise, and then we got to get them training and stuff. It's very hard to function one-on-one down there, and vice versa.
So-
I'm looking for people. I just got to track people. Nobody wants to work. I've got an interview tomorrow, and Monday. But either they can't pass a drug test or their background check, or it's like, and I think with the unemployment situation, they're making more on unemployment than they are coming to work part time. So they apply, but
Because they're required to
they're
be
required
on
to apply.
unemployment.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
we're noticing. 'Cause
Yeah.
you call them up for an interview, and
That's $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
That's
or
what
they'll set up
unemployment
the
is.
interview time and not show up. It's like, so, anyhow. So that's my problem right now. I'm just trying to get some part-timers. So.
Okay, I have a question for Mike. If we take the part-timers only to as far as we can pay them without doing the insurance thing, and then you're paying overtime to the regulars, it's costing us more money doing that than it would be if we were to offer the insurance and one of them decided to take it. Would that equal it out?
I would have to do the math on that. I can tell you this: we offer 24/7 coverage to the village. That's what we offer. So right now we have 4 full-time officers, and I have 2 part-time officers that are in training. I was away this week at Opata, which left my 1, 2, 3 full-time officers to cover 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Without bonus pay or...
They're getting overtime. They're getting overtime.
they're getting overtime, but
and
they're not
that's
getting shift pay, right?
they're not getting shift pay, but they do get overtime. But it's stressful on them. Now this is at operating at minimum. This is me saying, hey, I'm going to go work 2 shifts, which for the last 7 years we've never functioned that way, but now we are, which is fine until something happens. I'm behind on my administrative duties, but we've also had a lot since October, right? We had a lot with the financing, and then of course I've lost employees that I didn't know I was going to lose, and now I got to train people. The paperwork and everything that goes along with it is insane. And then I took this on, which is good, but we have daily responsibilities and we prioritize them the best we can. However, we do it with a skeleton crew all the time. And I know we were always told, watch our overtime. I had been denied overtime. I had certain hours, but if you look back through some employees have tremendous amounts of overtime that they've worked, where you have others that have none. And it's, how do we happy balance this? You know what I mean? Like, and I get why you might have some employees is like, oh, hey, what about this? What about that? Because they might have been told, well, you can't do that. You can't turn this in. You can't turn that in. So I think the village, maybe for you can't get help part-time, I can't. Maybe we look into creating full-time spots and you have a general laborer full-time that does multiple things. And how much does that cost versus how many part-time people have you went through in the last year? Last year, I lost one for a person. This year, I lost one. Last year in 2019, 2020, it was Officer Wilfong, was the only one that left. But we didn't have too many. We also promoted 2 to part-time, or to full-time. I have no more full-time to promote to. But I got one part-time officer for sure that wants full-time at some point. So however long it takes that person to absorb the knowledge from us to leave, we'll be right back here shortly later. I would love to get another officer part-time like I have Officer Tyree, who's already retired and just wants to work a few hours, but I would need 4 of him or her to fill the needs of the agency.
So we have only 4 full-time positions that
Including
we make
me.
Which includes you. Do we need to make another full-time position?
One of our strategic plans for 2013 that I wrote in Pelk and Clee, well, not Clee yet, but Pelk, was to bring an additional full-time officer on. It's inevitable. It's going to have to happen, or, you know.
Mostly because we have a school coming into our area that's.
We have a school coming in our area. We have a responsibility to the community. We have guidelines that take extra time. We have a lot of stuff coming down from the state, our policies, this House bills, this training that's coming out.
Okay, so call me ignorant, what does it take to give you another full-time position? Is it to
I would love to know that number.
I mean, is for Laura to find the money
I
for
think,
us to do that?
I think we need to sit down with Laura.
Okay.
Because I have a budgeting sheet that we have always filled in the blank, but we factor $25,000 a year is what the magic number was for family plan, if we had to pay family plan health insurance, right? But is that a true number? Because if it's not, then why are we using? I mean, I get you got to figure a little high, but maybe we do got to crunch some numbers. I know our budget usually has come in pretty under the last few, and I wish I had 2017 stats on here because I know that was a huge year of overtime for the PD because we had some very big casework there, and I know that, but I don't have it. But I don't think we've ever went over. In fact, we've come under, I think. So I don't know. And like, Councilman Babcock said, do we need to increase the budget? Does, the administrator need to increase the budget for his end?
Right.
I don't know what we need to do.
And in order to do that, we still need to talk to Laura to see if we've got the money to do so, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
True numbers.
We need to, you and I can sit down with Laura next time she's here or something and just.
You got any?
And if the village doesn't want to do that,
would you want, Mike?
What's that?
How many full-time employees would you like?
I would like to have one additional full-time officer. That would relieve a lot of. Most of my officers, and since I've been here, with the exception of none, and I say that because they've been very dedicated to this village. If you look through the stats, I know you can look at mine, we cash in 50% of our vacation time yearly. For me, I have a lot more vacation than somebody that has 2 weeks, but and I'm not saying every officer does it, but a significant amount because we can't go without coverage. And I know we've had gaps before, but then the community ask us about it. And we have to be very careful when we have no coverage because it's not like we can advertise it because of the profession that we're in.
Exactly.
So they find out later, and sometimes I've heard, and not much, the community is very supportive of the PD. But I've heard it's like, oh, well, they didn't have coverage, and maybe it came from internally. I have no idea, but it's like, oh, I thought you guys were supposed to be here all the time. Well, we are, but you know what? We also like to go on vacation. Sometimes we get sick, and we don't want to burn people out. So to prevent that, another full-time officer would be nice. When the school comes, the day shift, we all agree that the daytime population is beyond our regular population. In fact, I think it would be, I know for a fact that one time I went in there and asked the manager of Speedway, she did 2,800 transactions from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. That's,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So, and I know everybody that lives here is not necessarily home, but not everybody stops at Speedway. So if you have over 5,000 people passing through your village in an 8-hour day, one person to police that, and plus do administrative duties, does that phone ever stop, or do people ever stop knocking on that door? And what do they say when I'm not in here? Does he ever work? Well, he's actually out driving around because he didn't have an officer to do it, because he can't always do his administrative duties.
Right.
It's just deficient. Go down there and you got all the street guys, they have a pipe bus, and I just took one of your folks. I bet that hurt you.
Yeah.
So can we afford to pay another full-time officer or person and down there too? And if we can, what level? Like,
Well,
what
it
can you
almost
afford?
sounds like we can't afford not to.
If you always want to move forward, you do. I know our end, I feel like we've hit a ceiling down there about 2017-ish, 18-ish. I feel like we hit a ceiling. We got asked to do a lot of things, and I feel that the agency has done it, and then some. But you got to have personnel. So I know that was totally probably off topic of this, but maybe not.
Well, and bringing up the school again, an SRO for the school, and we still need to talk to the superintendent about
Politics.
grant politics, etc.
We wrote that grant, and we needed a signage from the superintendent at the time, which is not the current one, for us to file the grant, and they did not sign off on it. However, it wasn't they were anti-SRO. It was just our person that we had writing the grants had cold called them basically, and I know the superintendent was Brad Silva says I'm not telling anybody over the phone that I'm approving anything, officer. I don't have the authority to do that, and we were kind of at the deadline. But again, it was 2 of us working on it while we're training and doing investigations, and it just,
So we have to have an SRO down there? Or?
we do not. That is up to the school. But one thing that we do have to do is handle the calls down there, regardless of who's walking around in
It's
there.
still in our village. In our
Being a school
jurisdiction.
resource officer, the jurisdiction falls on the shoulders of the Enon Police Department.
And how many of our officers, I know you are
Me.
trained for an SRO, are you the only one?
Me.
You.
That's correct.
Okay, so if something were to happen down there, you would be the one that would probably do most of the,
If anything significant happens here as far as investigations, I'm going to do it, which that's my job, and that's fine.
Right,
That's not a
okay.
problem. But as an SRO, I can't be an SRO. I have
Right.
too many things to do.
right, no, I'd realize that.
But I don't have anybody I could just throw in there and do it either.
What does the training not consist of, but what's the time involved for training?
When they schedule it, it's a roughly a week-long training.
Okay.
It's not bad, but I would like to get the school to an agreement with us. But from my opinion, my opinion, I think that the county and the village of Enon need to together work together, and their SROs and maybe in an SRO at some point,
Right,
and we all be in. There's all of our kids are there throughout the county, township, and the village. And there's no, they have them and they float around already. They always had. I always worked with them very well. I don't necessarily know it has to be a full-time one out there, but if that's what the school wants, then that's up to the school. But as far as having somebody trained as an SRO and going through the training to deal with adolescents and teenagers and stuff like that, we need to do that regardless whether or not they pay for half of it, just so we have somebody that specializes in that and can help our youth when it's needed.
the fact that they were going to have cameras in the school, is that going to decrease trouble there, do you think?
I think because of the security features that are into that new building, I think it helps
It helps
protect
very
them.
well.
But
Okay.
a full-time school resource officer, I think that's up to the school whether they want it or not. But as far as us taking calls there and going in there and being able to, work with, like the training I've had when I've talked to some of the kids, even and you get some of this trouble out of them, or you just counsel them.
Right.
That just takes experience, and it takes the training of being able to send them to that. But for me to send somebody to the last full time, we were going to send somebody to SRO school back in 2018, and we had to, because we needed coverage, because I was going to training or taking off, or the other buddy, we didn't have the people, so we had to delay that and not send them. And they didn't go. And then they eventually left employment here. But one of their reasonings was because supposedly we didn't give them an SRO. And that's not really true. It's just can't give somebody an SRO position, school doesn't benefit
Right.
from it. But that's politics, I think. But if we had some staffing to where we could send somebody, without.
Have you talked to Mr. Knapke? Do you know what his?
It's been COVID. I've barely talked to
Oh,
anybody.
you already talked. Okay.
They're building a brand new school and they're moving everybody around.
Yeah.
It would
Okay.
right.
Yes. And yeah. Okay.
They're facing budgetary restraints and staffing.
Right.
I'm sure just like
But I mean,
we are.
as far as even, would he sign a grant if it were written again? And are there grants available now?
There's always an SRO grant, but it's the money always comes into it. But I was a part-time SRO. I went to the training and it benefited the school. I believe it did. It benefited me, and I want to send one of my officers to, but it takes a special person to do that, and they got to want to do it.
And do you have someone that?
I have officers that are trained in all kind of stuff down there that they don't specifically do because they don't like it, right? It's nothing against them, but you get what I'm saying? Just because they have the training doesn't mean they utilize that training
Right.
because it's not a passion of theirs.
Right.
We can't fault them for that, but in the same token.
Okay, well, that leads me to another question about training. Perishable skills. We do those training. We're up on that?
We always have to keep up on our training.
Okay.
I mean, it's just required, but
Right.
do they need more training? Of course, but everybody will always say they need more training. I say I need more training.
And are you doing the training, or is that costing
I can
us
do
to
some.
outsource?
I do firearms training, qualifications, all that, 'cause I'm qualified to do that. Tomorrow, as long as I pass my test, which I will, I'll be certified as a legal instructor, so I will at least have the certificate that says that I can talk about legal on a police level and be, certified to do it. My training, I've been here a while. I've taken a lot of training, and my training's good. I would love to get some other people, but with the staffing we have, it's hard for me to do in-house training, but work with other folks to bring them in and do
I
it.
think you are our perpetual student with a badge.
Well, I was there for a while,
You were-
2013.
Yeah, I know, yeah. That's a lot of training.
But, just
Okay.
village-wide, maybe we need to add some more full-time spots and figure something out.
I wouldn't mind having another full time. I mean, that would help out tremendously. But that's because
Imagine the money we'd save if we hired full-time. If you go through and look, I have done this, and I wouldn't ask you to do it right now, but go back and look at the last 3 years, look at each individual employee, and look at some of the hours of overtime some of those employees have had. As supervisors, we try to keep it down, but when they have a specialized position or they have to do it, nobody else can do it, or you don't have the people to do it, that has to be significant cost to this village. It is. I know it is.
But once again, like I said, I'd like to talk to Laura and see if
Yeah.
if we can swing it, and go from there.
Yeah, I'd like to get a meeting and set with her. And again, we've already, he saved the village tons of money by, I won't make a commercial joke, but switching the phone service. Look how much money that's going to save
right.
us.
Yeah.
Can we earmark that for? No.
Yeah.
I know that the federal government's supposed to be giving out money. I don't know much about the COVID, but I understand some of those funds are to create jobs. It looks like I was watching some of the presidential stuff. I don't know what we get. I don't want to quote any numbers or even say that we qualify, but if there's money that's going to be allowed to us to employ, some maybe full-time people, even if it's only for a couple years, why not?
Right.
Why not do that to help add to the investment of this village and its employees on all sides?
On all sides. Yeah,
Sure.
Great point. You have anything else, Ben?
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, is there any training that you guys need to do on your side? I mean, was there stuff that you would like to do over there?
Other than getting, the next license, like Wayne, he could get, his next water license. But other
That's
than
something he wants to do?
that, I got to talk to him. I think at one time he did, but right now he might be happy where he's at.
Okay.
I'm not real sure.
And you said you would like to have one more full-timer as well?
Yeah, if it would work out, that'd help out tremendously. Just like like you said, just as a general laborer, not really a specific water person, but yet help out in all the departments.
Yeah, like the administrative assistant. You have one. I do not.
Right.
That how beneficial it would be for me not to have to do all the paperwork for a full
Your officer
hiring
staff,
somebody.
is it just you, a lieutenant, and a sergeant?
Now, I have a sergeant, but his responsibility is patrol and to
lieutenant.
Right.
to
Okay.
have somebody else in charge.
So, Mike, if you did have an administrative assistant, would it have to be a sworn personnel?
Oh no, it wouldn't. I'm just talking like, for example, this like payroll. Like, I get it. Department heads do the payroll, but HR, I guess, is the word I'm looking for, right? And again, Christy she's our HR person, sort of, right? But sometimes I'm like, is it her responsibility to do this for me? Or, I mean, she does stuff for me when I ask, but it's like, oh, I thought she's supposed to do that, or oh, I didn't know I could get her to do. It's just
So
you see what I'm saying? But we try. We can't of our budget. If I had to pay a support staff like that, I would say no because I need it for somebody that's a qualified law enforcement officer.
Right.
I'd rather pay a sworn police officer to file and do paperwork because I could use them when needed for than because we tried that at one time. But I guess my question is it have to be set up like that, or can it be, hey, you're going to handle new hires across the board, get them with their paperwork, get them right, schedule this, call and get drug screens, right? Do all that. And if it's something that she can't handle, can we train one of the other part-time personnel that work in the front office to do some of that, to absorb?
So it's clerical more than what? That you need, like, calls and make appointments, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I give my example. He's a full-time administrator. I'm a full-time administrator.
Right.
He has a full-time assistant.
And you don't.
I don't. He has, to an extent, right?
Right.
In-house. If, let's say I didn't have to walk out the door and drive around. In a perfect world, I was doing nothing but administrative work like Chief Wilcox did. He has full-time, and I know that they have other titles, and I'm just saying, but then 2 part-timers in-house, right?
Right.
For 5 days a week, 9 hours a day. Or 24/7. The phone rings, I answer it. Those folks, the patrol officers, aren't encouraged to sit in the office all the time because the community wants to see them out, not to mention, they got their duties. But you get what I'm saying? So
Okay.
I don't know that we need that, but if I had more police personnel, I could schedule overlaps and I could say, hey, I'm going to have you work in the office and do some filing. I can't do that or else I got to pay overtime.
So some of your filing, though, would be sensitive that you wouldn't want a civilian.
Right, but I've got to teach
Unless
somebody
they
how
do.
to do that, and
Yeah.
not only.
Okay.
I mean, it's just we have 6 people right now, but 2 of them literally just started walking in the door this week to work, which
Right.
it'll take months to get that.
Right.
Um,
One more so than the other because he's newer at it.
yeah, and I know that our budget is they say you got to watch your budget, but I think we've watched our budget.
Kevin, in the job description of your assistant administrator, does it say anything about her helping the police department?
Not that I've seen, but I'd have to look at it again. So
But we know she has because.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she
we had
has.
it.
She
At
some of
some
her
point she had a
she's
desk
was
down
down
there.
there, and a percentage
Right.
of her salary came out of our budget, which would be fine, except for we wouldn't be having this meeting if I had a budget that was pretty full, right? Or I'm like, oh yeah, I got $10,000 to take out a budget for that. I
I mean,
mean,
if the next bond issue passed really big.
our money, I think our pay for our officers is, other than our starting pay for part-times, I think our pay for the size and what we do and what we give to our officers, at least my opinion, and I've asked them, of course, maybe they just tell me what I want to hear. I think it's fair. The only polled my officers, every one of them full-time and part-time, except for the new part-timers, so they would probably never say it out loud. Why would you say that to an employer? Everybody, seriously, we pay a part-time officer starting out $12 an hour. It's just embarrassing to say that out loud to me. And it's not disrespectful. That's what we were trying to afford. I know the reasons why we came up with that number. I know why we tried to keep the pay down, because we wanted to raise the pay of the officers that were really contributing. But in the same token, it doesn't
same
attract
token,
much
you
help.
got to keep those part timers.
Yeah, and we got to attract them. You said,
you
do
know,
I have any applicants?
To
I
fill
have
out the schedule.
two applications laying on my desk.
Why would I go here for 12 when I can go there for X amount? And
People do
why
look
would
at
I
dollar
carry
amounts.
a gun and?
Be clear,
and-
is this what you would like it to
I
be?
revised it, yeah, and I thought about simplifying it. Bump them up to. I like the 15 I put on there. Again, it was a magic number I pulled out of the air with listening to probably media and fed into me. But 15, it and then top them. They top out a little earlier, and they top out at 18. I did an adjustment on the full time because the only person you guys did this in 17, the only person that had 6 years in, I had 8 years in at that time. I would have been technically the only one eligible. Well, I was eligible for a raise at that time. I just didn't get it. But everybody else, nobody's been here for 6 years. So I kind of shortened it to give, like Kevin was pointing out there about the longevity and the kind of like the goals officers, instead of on that 5th year, instead of bumping them up a buck and making them wait a 6th year for that, I just took that and turned it into 2. Again, this was just an idea. It's nothing, but have the 5-year top out at the 24 an hour for 5 years at a full time. And then the part-timers basically push them up to the minimum starting wage of a full-time officer within a 2-year period. And our part-time officers work their tails off. They always have. Because they want full-time. So they do everything. And they work our holidays and our weekends.
So do you feel that your revised start-off pay, would that keep people? Would that attract people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. To know that they could make it to $18 an hour within a 2-year period. We lost an officer to leave. It was going to get 41 and a quarter hours at 17 and a quarter an hour. And I asked the officer if I could have paid you that and guarantee you those hours. Now, they were going to get full-time after a year, so in fairness. And also, this officer declined full-time here because of the shifts. His response was absolutely. They love working here.
Okay.
He left solely for money and opportunity of advancement, which we couldn't offer. Though we did have a full-time opening, but the shift he didn't like. But that's fine. But if I had more people, I'd be moving around. I have to move my supervisor to an evening shift here soon because that's what everybody wants, council and all that. I don't know their feelings. I'm sure they're not gonna like afternoons, but what happens when we do that as a business and then they say, I don't really want to work there like that anymore. I'm not saying that would happen, but what do I have to fall back on? Because I have a limited pool of employees.
So we need to talk to Laura to see if we can give them at least a 25-cent an hour.
We could
Shift
ask her to crunch the
differential?
numbers on what a 25-cent an hour shift differential would be,
help.
and make sure we calculate in the holidays and overtime and all that. And I can probably try to come up with an average, but we know how many hours that we serve, and we know how many. We're always going to have overtime in our profession. There's just no way to avoid it, but we do limit it the best we can.
Unless we did live in that perfect world you mentioned, and then we wouldn't have crime. We'd be out of a job, right?
Yeah, if we had a more pool of resources, we wouldn't have to pull
Yeah.
people in to work overtime. It might save. I don't know the answers. I just know since I've been here that our biggest problem is the amount of employees that we have, our resources of employees.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they pay $1,000 a week to stay home, we're struggling to get part-time employees because
Right.
I can't say I blame them.
It's tough.
There's no applications.
It's tough.
Okay, I know Laura doesn't come to our council meetings because she has a meeting that she goes to on those same Tuesdays. Does she have the alternate Tuesdays off that we could ask her to come to our meeting?
I will.
And if we did a meeting? But, just maybe get a couple old 3 dates from her and we can select that time for a meeting with her.
Yeah, and maybe me and Kevin could pregame a little bit on a couple hour block during a day and sit down and so because I know that I'm bringing you numbers, but I'm bringing you more ideas, and then you're giving me feedback, and I go get them together. Maybe we can kind of pregame it and then say, hey, this is kind of what we came up with.
And knowing that the bottom line is what Laura says we can afford to do, and we want to, increase the pay and the benefits, et cetera. The bonuses, and make everybody happy.
Yeah, we
we
pay a
wanna
lot.
do
We pay a
that.
lot of money for the people that's been here for a while, but
Okay.
they're all going to leave
I'll get hold of
eventually.
Laura.
Okay.
See if we can get her
Get some
scheduled.
dates from her, and then we'll schedule the next meeting. And so I guess, does anybody have anything else to say for now?
My understanding was as a shift differential was an idea, and again, I think like a quarter or 50. I don't know. We could talk to Laura, but I think that is a nice
I'd like
gesture.
to ask if we can afford to do that. Yes.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
Ben?
Agreed.
I think it'd
Okay.
be beneficial.
Absolutely.
Just like if you work in a factory, you get a shift differential. You work.
Absolutely.
In, these
totally.
guys are out on the street and carrying guns and protecting, and they,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we like,
Totally
for
amazed
example,
it's
the
not already
paperwork.
in place.
You've got Kevin, Christy, and me all of us pulling paperwork off these websites because God forbid the state not revise a form every 2 years, right? Like, for example, your tax form, right? I got a packet I got down here at the other end, and I'm looking through it, and I'm like, tear out, tear out, tear out, because I know that I've been using a more current form. But again, that was communication, luckily, but
Yeah.
we just had a universal, here's a hire packet, here's the policy manual, here's this. It's easy to do universal. I can take care of the extra we have, but what a great thing if we could just a one-stop shop for all the administrators and employees to point to just that one person that's their responsibility. It would be helpful. I'm good.
You're good for tonight, and Kevin, you're good? Ben?
I'm good.
Okay, do you want to,
I make a motion
Thank
to
you.
adjourn.
Right.
and I guess since I'm the other committee member, I will second said motion. And I have 7:52 as our time.